Welcome to DFS Insights, where the game behind the game comes to life. I am David Geislinger, and alongside me is David Grant Jr., my cousin and co-strategist. The teams up on the block are the Dallas Mavericks at Oklahoma City Thunder.
With your lineup success as our top priority, this is where David and I will dive deep into our top three players that we like for this specific game in the series. We'll break down the strategy behind our picks and share the insights that will help you put your lineups over the top and into the money.
Yeah, so exciting game. The Denver Minnesota game. So Denver did pull off that one, but yeah, what's gonna happen here in Game Five? It's gonna be pretty interesting to see who takes that lead going down the final stretch here. But before we get into Game Five, let's just do a quick recap here of Game Four. So heading over here to Game Four, it does look like OKC snuck it out there at the end. Ended up winning 100-96. It was crazy.
Yeah.
SGA basically took over the third and the fourth quarter and just completely dominated Dallas. But Luka, PJ Washington, Derek Jones, top three fantasy producers for Dallas, and SGA, Holmgren, and Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams, the number one is the top three there. So the optimal looked SGA holding down that top spot MVP for the fourth time in a row. Then you had Jalen Williams number one, Chet Holmgren, Derek Jones, and then PJ Washington. Derek Jones and PJ Washington in the utility spot. And then heading in here, we're starting off, looking at the rough projected ownership coming into Game 5. SGA is, basically looking like he's going to start overtaking Luka. Is just obviously from his performance and from it seems like the game script that Dallas is doing, and Luka's usage is kind of dropping. So it's starting to look like SGA even at the lower salary starting to get up there about 40%. And Luka's still sitting around 49. So here's the projected ownerships here in Game 5. Use them, help you create that unique lineup. And now getting in here to the Game 5. Oklahoma City is favored. We're heading back to OKC. So it looks like Vegas is giving the home field the advantage, which Vegas in the Western Conference is on a hot streak here. And that's sarcasm in case you couldn't tell. They also have, the over/under sitting at 212.5. OKC's offensive rating about a 111.2. Defensive rating 108.1. The game pace is about a 96.13. So everything's about average. They're kind of evening out. No noticeable key injuries for OKC. Luka is still listed as game time decision, but we all know he's going to play. And Kleber is still out for this matchup. So that's how Game 5 is. So what do you have anything to add before we go ahead and get into our key player breakdown here?
Just that I'm excited. Man, this has been great basketball. Things have been back and forth. Right when you think one team's down and out, they come back. So I'm glad, we're not seeing like just sweep here, sweep there, that type of stuff. We're actually getting to, enjoy some great playoff basketball, Western Conference and Eastern Conference. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive in and see what we got going on here with this Dallas OKC game.
Nice. All right, well, go ahead and start it off. What do you got for your first pick here?
I mean, this is just pretty much an absolute no-brainer to me. Um, I have to go back to SGA. I have absolutely no idea how he is 16-5 and how he is less than Luka Doncic when he is putting up the numbers he's putting up in this series. It makes no sense. Um, People finally caught on last game where the ownership was finally more on SGA than it was on Luka. But before that, Luka was dominating the ownership game. Um, and so uh, yeah, we're talking 63 fantasy points last game, 65 before that, 66 the game before that, 60 in game one. So he's by far the best player. I'm going to go ahead and argue in the series right now, or on the on the floor. I would right now take him over Luka Doncic and Kyrie. Uh, He's been extremely consistent. His team is going to be relying on him. He's going to be taking a solid 20 plus field goal attempts. Uh, Everything that he is doing is, I mean, I'm talking everything he does is in the green. He's averaging over the last 5 games. This does go into the one game before. It says 59.86, but let's be honest, he's really averaging more like 63 in this series. So, but his usage is at 32%. His minutes are at 40 plus a game. Um, you just can't, he's 30 points a game. Uh, you just can't match that. And at 16-5, while Luka is sitting up there at 17, I just can't ignore it. He's going to be rostered um, primarily at the MVP. The only way I could see him going into star would be if Kyrie has a game. I honestly don't see Luka having a better game at all. Not from what I'm seeing. Um, Really Kyrie either. It's just more that Kyrie's healthy and just needs to step up. But you just have to roster SGA. There's at this point, there's no way around it. Does regression come in and at some point he's going to fall back down to earth, or is this just the matchup made in heaven for SGA? Because it's really starting to look like it's a match made in heaven for him. So that's who I'm starting off with. What are your thoughts, and who do you got here for your first pick?
Yeah, well, obviously, looking at his previous 4 games here, it's kind of hard, not to argue that. And then obviously with the salary he's at, he's coming in at the highest, points per salary, about a 3.8, which is by far the highest. The next highest is like 3.3. So, yeah, I'll definitely be, probably definitely over the field. If, doing 10 lineups, I'll probably be close to about 6 of them. About 60% SGA. He is sitting even with his his average being what it is at 63.7. I mean, the deviation that he's had at least in this series is only about 3 points. So you're looking anywhere from
Yeah.
mid 50s to mid 60s is kind of roughly. Uh, I mean, over the course of the entire playoff series, he gets a little bit more. He obviously didn't put up this performance against New Orleans. So once you start opening up the sample size, it does start adding into that range. He's definitely open because I mean, if you just take it here, it's only plus or minus 3. You take it just adding the 4 games on New Orleans. Now you're plus or minus 11. And his average goes down, from 63.7 to 55. So with that, I'd still, like I said, I'll still be, if he comes in, he was at a 49% ownership last matchup. I'll probably be above that at 60%. Like I said, 6 lineups out of 10, I'll have him at the MVP. Especially since he's clearly, so as looks like the best player on the slate, and he's actually cheaper than the person rostered the highest on the salary. So
And for what it's worth, last game he did come out in the first half and only have, I mean, Not much, man. I mean, I want to say 18 fantasy points. Don't quote me exactly, but it was a very low number where I thought he was going to have an off night and, hurt a lot of my lineups. And then by the end, he ended up hitting again and saving my night for me. So even though his first half wasn't great, he definitely came through. And the good news is he's also a great defender. He had 2 steals and 2 blocks in that game. And he's known for that because he's long. So, yeah, right on. Well, who do you got here for your first play?
Speaking of long, I'm gonna go with Chet Holmgren as my first pick. Yeah, rookie. Coming in at the 12K mark, his points per salary is basically up there. It is the third highest on the slate. Next to SGA and PJ Washington. So coming in, he's getting the minutes 35.7, usage 17.2. He is averaging 39.3, so he is up there. He is projected roughly 35 points this matchup. I do like him in that star pro position at the 12K. I'm kind of looking for him to earn at least that many points. Like I mentioned, his average is 39.3 with basically a range of outcomes. So his upper like 75% threshold he can get. He'll get you probably about 45 to 46, 48 fantasy points. And on the lower end, he's still going to be in the low 30s. Probably it's an okay matchup. It didn't look like he was, he hasn't been hitting that, I guess, as many threes. But I mean, game 2, people started kind of getting nervous. He had, that 29-point fantasy, but he's strung together a few, 40 points now. So I think this is just kind of a bigs matchup. I don't think the bigs can contain him, and I don't think he can contain the other bigs. So,
Yeah.
So with that, like I mentioned, the star probably be having him up there quite a bit. He's coming in at 13% ownership at the star and 19% at the pro. So to make, based on my lineup construction, if I need to, be more unique or, switch it up or, try to be more unique, throw him up in the star, vice the pro. So, yeah, what do you think about that? But before I get into my second pick here.
Yeah, so that'll be probably the one and only pick that we do agree on. That is also one of my top 3 plays.
Okay.
And even if we're going in order, he is my second favorite play on the slate, uh, mainly due to his consistency. As you mentioned, he did have the one, 29 fantasy point game, but his first game he did have 43, and then he followed up the bad performance with 41 and then 44, so he got better and better. So I just count that kind of like, as a one-off. He is a rookie. He's now playing at home. Rookies always play better at home. So in a huge, huge pivotal game here, um, as long as the pressure doesn't get to them, which I think that they're too young to even realize that. They're out there just balling, having a good time. I think it almost benefits them. Ignorance is bliss. If anything, the pressure's on Luka and Kyrie because they're the vets. They've been there, done that, but not really. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, Kyrie has. Kyrie has a ring. He's been there, done that. But Luka's still, trying to prove himself here in the league and get past the Western Conference Finals. And now he might not even make it out of round 2 if he's not careful here. So Chet to me is the second most consistent player, consistent delivering salary wise and his performance on the floor. So love the pick. That is well my second pick. So yeah, who do you got here as your final play?
My second pick.
Or sorry, your second pick.
Second pick, I'm going to go to the other big on the other side of the floor here, Daniel Gafford. coming in at 10K salary, it's kind of hard to pass him up. Coming in at 3.03, so he is the fourth best points per salary person on the slate. I mean, 10K and what he's been doing. You know, 24 minutes. Obviously, I would like to see that a little bit higher. Mainly, to be honest with him, I just don't want to see him get hurt. But
Yeah.
with the 24 minutes, his usage is pretty nice, 19.9. He's averaging 30.3 points. He's projected 24.3. Yeah, the first game, bumped him up. He was about 45 fantasy points, and then, a few high 20s and then a 20 performance. So I do like him. He does have, basically, 30-point average, but he does have a very nice range where it's, about plus or minus 11 points. So he could get you 41, and he could also get you, 19. That's Daniel Gafford. So I'm taking the risk with him. I'm going to be utilizing him, quite a bit, basically throughout the lineup, in the star, pro, and utility spots, based on what my lineup's looking like. But I think with the potential that he has to get the high points and the matchup that he's with, he's a great fit. And his ownership wise, star, he's owned at 1.7%, pro 16, and utility at 19. So definitely just be sprinkling him in there, in those 10 lineups. If I was to create 10, he might not be in all 10, but he will be in probably the majority of them. So with that, what do you think of Mr. Gafford, and what do you got for your final play?
Yeah, nope. Love Daniel Gafford. As hopefully it's clear now, but everyone that is out there been watching and following us through these playoffs and everything. I'll continue to go to that well, especially at 10K. As you kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, you kind of said it's kind of the bigs against the bigs, and neither one of them can really stop each other. So it's like Chet Holmgren's getting his, but then PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, and even Derek Lively's now coming alive, and they're all getting theirs. So it's I'll be mixing and matching some of them, even playing some of them together, because I do kind of feel with what their salaries are and the variance that's there as far as what their floor and ceiling is. Yeah, great play. Love the Gafford play. Everyone I'm sure is still going to be on the PJ Washington train, and for good reason. I mean, why hop off if he's now have strung a few of these great games together? Um, as you mentioned, as long as Gafford doesn't get hurt out while he's out on the court, he might get a couple extra good minutes. But we've also seen him in 25 minutes score 48 fantasy points, 48, 50, right around that range. So he is capable of still doing it in the lower minutes, which is always great to have in your back pocket. So, yep, love the play. I'll be having quite a bit of exposure to him. Um, this will lead me kind of over to my final play. This is an unusual thing. Haven't done this here on DFS Insights before, but instead of picking a play that I think is like one of my top three plays, technically this is I mean, I am considering this as a top three play, and it's called Fade Luka Doncic because Luka is 17K, and at the 17K, he has not really hit value in any game except for one. Um, and, they tried to make it last game where, like, oh, it's pretty easy to fit SGA and Luca in. And, they tried to trick you to make you think that that could be optimal. And, of course it wasn't, because Luca can't get his stuff together. I don't know what his deal is. He's too busy yapping at the refs literally every play, up and down the court. It's really starting to get, annoying. Um, and, basically, at first I empathized because he was hurt. It was very clear he was hurt in game one. Um, he had 19 field goal attempts and only made six, and only had one three-pointer made. Game two is when he did have his solid game. But other than that, game 3, he played 40 minutes, only had 22 points. He had 17 field goal attempts and made 7. He did have 15 rebounds that game, so at least he was there. Um, 5 assists, 2 steals. But again, he's coming in under what he's projected for every single night except for one of them. And on one of those nights, he came in 15 points under his what he was projected for on multiple different websites. So he hasn't shown me any reason to have any faith in him. He could easily tweak his knee, tweak his ankle, uh, get ejected. I don't know how often that happens, but I think the refs are used to getting abused by him by now. I'm just tired of putting him in my lineup and forcing him, hoping for that 60 plus game. Because if he does have that, and so does SGA, you're going to have both of them in the lineup. Um, Usually I don't, I might, let's just say I do 15 lineups. I might do that in one lineup just just so that I don't lose out because the one game I don't do it is when it hits. I'm sure everyone out there has dealt with that. So, but yes, fade, not completely, obviously, when I use that term, but be way under the field on Luca. He has not proven himself. He is hurt. Uh, there's conspiracy theories saying he's not as hurt as what he is, but either way, I know what I've seen with my eyes. He is hurt. Hopefully, Kyrie steps up. Um, it's going to fall on this is going to come on Kyrie's shoulders if they end up losing this game. I mean, yes, Luke is the face, so I'll kind of cut it off there. I could talk about this for a whole other podcast on how I feel about that, but yes, fade Luca for the most part. Just be under the field on him. Stick with SGA because SGA's worst game most likely is going to be Luca's average game right now, which is like 50. He has a 41, 50, and a 49 with his 63 outlier. Well, SGA is averaging basically 63. So an outlier for him is going to be 55, 50, and that is what Luca has. Only you're saving yourself, 500, 500, and I mean, at this point, the people are onto the ownership, so you will have to change some stuff um, down below and some of the other multipliers. But yeah, that's my pick, Fade Luca. So how do you feel about about me taking that kind of route? And who do you got here for your final play?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can see your logic. Why you're thinking that. I'm not gonna go as far as that. I mean, because if you're just looking solely at this series and no other performance, then yes, obviously, SGA, like I said, he's averaging 63. He has a range of about 2 points, so you're getting 65 or 61. Luca, on the other hand, is coming in at 50 with the plus or minus 9. So you're getting 41 or 59. But if you actually just expand it one more series, just until, the round one, Luca's actually has a higher or slightly lower. He's at 53.5, and then SGA's at a 54.9 average point wise. So they're roughly about the same. Luca's a little bit less range. He's at a 6.5 range where SGA is at a 10.5. So where he can get you 65, 45 to 65 roughly. Luca can get you 47 to 61. So I mean, it's not as much of a difference. And then obviously, if you start probably expanding out even more, you're going to lower it because looking at even the Clippers, Luca's averaging 58, 59 points there. Or that's the round one. But going back, 67 points against Miami, 65 against Houston. So I mean, Luca has the potential. Now, when it comes to his injury and them not reporting what's really going on, that's for you to either you're risking that. However, I think whatever the game script is, he is going down in usage. I mean, you can see that just looking at the numbers wise from game one to game two to 3 and 4. He's gone down,
Yeah.
from his average, 30 plus to now I think he's in mid 20s. Uh,
Wow.
so, and then obviously PJ Washington is eating up all those, that he's benefiting from that. So now with the series tied, does Luka come back in and get that usage back? So I mean, there's so many different scenarios, and no matter how bad he does look, he's still literally the second highest scoring fantasy point person on the slate.
Yeah.
So if it's not SGA, it's probably going to be Luka. So if you do completely fade Luka and it just so happens to be Luka, then you put yourself in a
Yeah.
very bad
Yeah.
spot. So I mean, it's based on what your risk tolerance is. If you that if you want to cover yourself, go SGA and then a little bit more Luka. If you think SGA's where it's at, the best obviously portion of it, then go all SGA. But other than that, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have if I'm doing 6 SGA, I'm probably doing 4 Luka. I'm not. Don't see anybody else being the MVP of this slate.
Yep. I fully agree. Yeah. I don't see anyone else. May except Kyrie could be the exception. But he's being real passive. Every first half, he's just the most passive guy ever. And then the second half, he shoots. So unless he comes out with a different attitude, uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I might. It depends. Like, I mean, I'll as I start doing lineups and things like that. I might see what the total expected value is when I get and do some lineups with Kyrie and maybe Jalen Williams, but I just don't see. I'll have to do a little bit more lineup, do a
yeah,
little bit
yeah,
more lineup
for
construction
sure.
to fully say 100% not going anybody but SGA or Luca. But yeah, yeah.
Nice. Well, who you got here to wrap us up with then for your final pick?
Final pick. I'm going back. I have to. I think he got screwed out of his chance in the optimal last time. It's the other
Oh yeah,
Jalen
yes,
Williams too. So
nice.
6K,
Yep.
6K salary. He's getting minutes. Average 13.5. His usage is decent when he's in 14.8. He's averaging 15 points. He's only projected 10. And I believe the last matchup he ended with about 10.5, so roughly what he's projected now. Uh, but I mean, looking at game one, his upside in 17 minutes, he had 25 fantasy points. So he has, you know, quite a bit of potential there coming in, with an average of 15.4 and, a range of about 7. So anywhere from, 8 fantasy points to 22. And at 6K salary, like, even with that 10.5, like, I was happy. I'm like, oh, yeah. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
unfortunately, obviously, it just didn't pan out based on the other, scores that were scored in it. But typically, if a 6K player can get you 10 to 15 points, you're looking pretty good. It's just the lineup construction up at the top had a few different orders on it, but yeah, I like him. He gets it. And I was thinking he was really kind of correlated with Chet, like performance wise. Like if Chet was doing bad, he would go up, but it's not as much of a correlation as I originally thought. So potentially, if him or maybe I think and just I think he's one of the better lower salary plays. Even though a lot of
Yeah.
those the 4 OKC players that were looking pretty good, that are down there in the 7 to 6K range, they all basically dropped. Wiggins dropped to 7K. Joe dropped to 6,500. Wallace dropped to 6,500, and now you have Jalen Williams at 6K. So you got quite a bit of options. I just think he's the best option wise. So
Yep. Yep. I fully agree. I'll be going back to that 100%. 100% at 6K. Yeah, you just can't go wrong. As you mentioned, the range of outcomes. He's already shown the upside that he can get. And even as you mentioned, 10 fantasy points to 12 fantasy points, if the other guys do what they can do, you and I have seen plenty of winners through these playoffs, specifically that one of those 10 fantasy point people are in the optimal lineup. So, and again, Jalen Williams does have the upside. So, yep, love the play. Love the play. I'll be doing the same thing and going back to that well.
All right, nice. Yeah, well, so yeah, there's our six key players. If please make sure you do like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. It does help out the channel quite a bit. So if you feel like we didn't cover a player that you happen to think is a key player, hey, put that down in the comments. We'd be more than happy to give our feedback on any player that we didn't mention. Obviously, we don't cover every player on the slate because that would just be way too long of a video there to go on, and I'm sure you guys don't want to hear 6 hours of just one game. So. Yeah, with that, like I said, make sure you do all the things that you can to help support here. We like to try to get some more engagement, start growing this community. So, with that, stay tuned to DFS Insights. We're covering, basically the Western Conference here. Looks like potentially the Denver Minnesota game will be the next one up, and potentially the last one in that series. Denver's looking firing on all cylinders there. So that video will be up next, and then I believe right after that will be Game 6 here of the Dallas OKC. So this video will put you directly into the Game 4 video of OKC. So if you want to get that information, there's you can watch that. So with that, good luck. Hope to see you up on that leaderboard. David, yeah, you have anything to say?
Just that obviously we're way deep into these playoffs, but we also are covering MMA. UFC 302 will be coming up here soon. Man, we got Islam Makhachev against Dustin Poirier for the belt, and we got Sean Strickland against Paulo Costa. Man, it's gonna be a great card. So I'm pretty sure Dave and I will be covering that. That's coming up. I'm trying to see the date on here, but it's UFC 302. We know it's on a Saturday, so I'm sure we'll find a way to squeeze that in there. Obviously, our main priority is these playoffs right now. So good luck to everybody out there. Hope to see you guys at the top. If you got any questions, leave them in the comments. And good luck, and see you at the top. Make that money.